Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Sneaker Stories, coming from the basement today in the cold December Friday. Today, I've got Dr. Jason Flaum with us to talk through his background and kind of get to know him. Dr. Flaum is our December speaker, and we're really looking forward to that on December 19th. Again, our luncheons are downtown at the Wincoop Brewing Company in downtown Denver. You can join us in person. You can join us online. It's going to be a great talk, and we're really looking forward to it. So, Dr. Flum, thank you so much for being here. How you doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to doing both this interview and giving the talk on the 19th.
So let's just talk a little bit about your background. First of all, tell us where you're from.
Sure. I grew up on Long Island, New York.
Okay.
So, yeah, grew up there, lived there for about 18 years before I went up to college at the University of Miami in 1994.
Where did you have any local experience with rocks as a kid? Were you into geology growing up where you did, or?
Absolutely. My dad actually has a master's in geology from Stony Brook. He was an earth science teacher on Long Island. So we kind of grew up as kids going all over outcrops up and down the East Coast. We did driving vacations, with a camper and camped all over the Northeast and East Coast. So every trip there was always a stop at an outcrop somewhere, and particularly up along the New York Thruway. So grew up on glacial geology and Devonian geology in New York.
Oh, fantastic. So, and as somebody, I've got young kids, as somebody who has young kids, I mean, when do you remember when that started to really kind of take a hold for you? Like when, or was it just kind of through repetition that yeah.
Yeah, I can remember you were going, I was probably about 8 or 9. And the first time that my dad took out the rock hammers, we started pulling out fossils in the Onondaga limestone on the New York Thruway. And my dad still has some of those fossils we found. And we would go find shark's teeth on little trips in riverbeds in New Jersey, that kind of stuff. That man, I had to be younger than 10, certainly.
Oh, super cool. Yeah, that'll leave an impression, finding cool stuff like that. Okay. So, and then how did you pick where you went to school, and yeah, what drove that decision?
So I wanted to do geology, but I wanted to have the marine science focus on it. And at the time, University of Miami with the Rosenstiel School had just an outstanding marine science program, and it was a pretty easy fit.
Okay. Cool. And then you did your PhD at Northwestern?
Yes.
And, okay. So how did you decide whether to do a PhD or master's? Was that like kind of like always your plan, or did you kind of follow the path? Or
I did a master's first, actually. So I did a master's at the University of Alabama.
Okay.
And then from there, I wanted to do teaching. I really enjoyed actually teaching college level during both my undergrad and my master's program. Did not want to go back and teach high school. So what my dad did and all that, and I knew that wasn't going to be for me. But teaching at the college level, I really enjoyed. Okay. So the idea of having a PhD and working at a kind of a small liberal arts program, that was always my objective throughout my academic life.
Okay.
So that was what led me to do the PhD.
Okay. So what kind of projects did you? Let's start with your master's. What did you do for your master's thesis?
So my master's, it was under Dr. Lou Bartek, who eventually went to North Carolina. Was a project looking at modeling storm deposition, actually, with a group from the Naval Research Lab, and then using high frequency chirp sonar data to do sequence stratigraphic analysis of the Holocene and identify sonar characteristics of storm beds on the seafloor.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and so then trying to take the models that they were developing and use them through different sea level configurations on the East China Sea continental shelf over the Holocene, and how the storms would actually, where the major deposits would be, and if we could actually simulate the bottom topography over the course of 10,000 years.
Wow. Okay. So that's really cool. And so were they using that to kind of help where pipelines or some sort of something
No,
goes, or
so it was Naval Research Labs. We had a military basis to it.
uh
A lot of it was how does the C4 change on storm during a storm deposition,
okay,
and then using that for identification of certain things that might be around the C4, during for military purposes.
fair enough. Okay, that's cool. And so, I mean, has that kind of influenced you? I'm just kind of thinking about some of the things that we look at on seismic or whatever. Like, I mean, has that kind of helped paint the picture in your mind of some of these depositional bodies from the ancient in the Holocene?
Well, absolutely. That kind of that picked up very well in what I did for undergraduate thesis project with Hal Wanless in the mangroves in Western Florida, and looking at some of the hurricane deposition there. It added to it a stratigraphic component of not
Okay,
just looking at the modern, but going throughout the 10,000 years of the Holocene, but then adding and being able to then develop techniques of interpreting seismic at a higher resolution, but thinking about, okay, what do those surfaces look like as your the frequency of your seismic data gets further back, and eventually that led to what I did in oil and gas my first 10 years of my career at Exxon, which was doing a whole bunch of seismic character
okay,
source rock, that type of work.
wow, wow, cool. And then, so what about your PhD? Did you carry on some of the marine studies in your PhD?
So my marine went much further into the ancient. My PhD, I should say, went back into the Cretaceous. So that was a sedimentary geochemistry project around the oceanic anoxic event 2 in the Western Interior Seaway.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So outcrop work in the Rockies or
More core work. So
core work?
yeah. So now being at the USGS is somewhat fun for me because I'd spent a lot of time at the Core Research Center during my
Yeah.
PhD, sampling the Portland core and the Rebecca Bowens cores and all the other famous oceanic anoxic event 2 cores.
Okay, cool. Very good. Very good. Okay. And then following grad school, did you maybe you said you went into Exxon. Was that right after your PhD?
That was right for my PhD. So I graduated in 2008. I always, like I said earlier, I had this kind of pipe dream of always wanting to go teach at a small liberal arts college. But in 2008, the economy was absolutely falling apart, and oil and gas was hiring like crazy. And I had, that by that point, I was married, had a 15-month-old child, and Exxon came calling, and you couldn't say no. So
Sure.
down to Houston we went, and
Sure.
don't regret it for a minute. It was a fantastic career.
Okay. Yeah, what kind of things were you doing there? Were you were part of the research
So yeah, I was hired as part of the research lab there.
okay.
That was when Exxon was really getting into unconventionals. So they were with a mudstone background from my PhD work, they brought me right into a lot of their evaluations prior to their merger with XTO to work on their cores that they had collected in various resource plays around the country and evaluate that. And then part of the teams that were expanding that knowledge into South America at the time. So I spent a lot of time working La Luna and Vaca Muerta in Colombia and Argentina.
Wow, fantastic. And you get to look at core for your job. I mean, how cool is that?
It was great, and there was a lot of outcrop work involved in that too, which was
Okay.
really nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so you spent some time at Exxon. What was that about? You said you're I think reading your bio here. 11 years in the industry between
Yep.
Exxon and Total.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So 11 years at Exxon. Like I said, mostly working on unconventionals, but did spend some time working on source rock characterization, geophysics of source rock, which was a really fascinating project. Spent some time, drilling wells with XTO before I moved on to Total.
Oh,
Unfortunately, I got to spend about 7 months at Total. That was a very difficult situation, but worked out for the best, and that got me through about 2020.
okay. Okay. Cool. And then, so how did you end up at the USGS?
Well, so after I got laid off at Total, it was right before COVID had hit. I had a couple of job offers down in Houston. Pretty quickly after that, I was down to negotiating vacation time with the job offer I was going to take. That was on a Wednesday night. And then that Friday was the day the NBA and the Houston Rodeo shut down because of COVID.
Yeah.
And looked at my wife and said, "We got a problem. We need this job offer is not going to take." That was evident right away. And of course,
Yeah.
Monday, that job offer got pulled. I said, what's going on with COVID? This is going to be long term. This is not going. This is going to cause a major downturn in industry. Is already in the midst of a downturn. This is only going to enhance it. I said, this might be an opportunity for us to think about getting out of industry, which is something that we really had been talking about for a while anyway.
Okay.
And so started saying, looking for government jobs. My older boy at the time was in 7th grade, going into 8th grade. So if we were going to move, that was going to be about the time to do it. It'd be the last chance we would have. And the job that I ended up getting had just been posted on the USGS website and USA Jobs website. And I showed it to my wife, and she went, "Well, it looks like it was written for you, so you might as well apply for it."
Yeah.
And was about 6 months later, here I am.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So, what was I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I've tried to apply for some of those jobs before, and what's the secret sauce for getting getting a response? It's
It is very complicated. For anybody watching this, if you've ever seen some of my stuff that I've done on LinkedIn when I was laid off, I actually have a whole interview I did with Melanie Woods about actually navigating that system.
Oh, okay.
So
Cool.
I'm happy anybody who's watching this would be happy to share that with you. Feel free to connect with me, and I can
Oh,
pass along that video to you.
I'll put a link in it at the end of this video, so everybody
Absolutely
can do that, because I think
yep.
that's useful for anybody that's going down that road.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult system to navigate. It takes a lot of time and energy, and probably not something to sit and discuss throughout this interview. But like I said, I've got resources I can provide to anybody who's interested.
That's great. That's fantastic. Cool. All right. So, and what kind of things are you doing at the USGS? What's been keeping you busy lately?
Yep. So I was hired as a research sedimentologist in the Central Energy Resources Science Center. The overall objective of that center is to conduct resource assessments around the world. And traditionally, those have been oil and gas assessments, but they are becoming more and more geothermal oriented, minerals oriented, heavy metal, produced waters, a lot of multi-resource type work. My group is focused on the Gulf Coast, but in the midst of all of that, we have a heavy research presence, and not just with assessments. So we have, the majority of people at the USGS are researchers. And so I was hired as one of the researchers, where I do a lot of work looking at paleoclimatic and research efforts into understanding the distribution of carbon buried, the ways carbon has been buried in the past, and particularly focused on paleoclimate events in the geologic past. Okay. And of course, those apply to resource assessments, but looking at source rock distribution, unconventional resource distribution. So we apply it with all of that. But there's a heavy focus on paleoclimate and what has controlled the burial of both organic and inorganic carbon during climate events in the geologic past.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like it's useful in several disciplines, right?
It is, and it's a lot of fun. Highly interdisciplinary. We've got great geochemists involved with us, petrophysicists involved with us, so we're able to take a pretty wide approach on how we evaluate the carbon burial and how carbon cycling has been affected in the geologic past, and lots of people that we're able to interact with in academia as well.
Cool. Okay. All right. So maybe you can give our listeners or our viewers a little preview of your talk coming up December 19th. What can we expect to learn about Delta Log R over the Greenhorn?
Sure. One of the big things that I was involved in at Exxon that I've been able to carry over into my USGS career now has been coming up with improved ways of characterizing fine grain rocks. There's a lot of effort that's been out there over the last 20 years since people like Jürgen Scheiber and Kevin Bohacs published all sorts of work discussing that these are not homogeneous laminated mudstones, but rather were deposited in very highly energetic settings and have very different characteristics, not only from basin to basin, but within each stratigraphic unit. One of the issues that we noticed is that Delta Log R was developed in a basin where a lot of the mudstones actually are pretty homogeneous. They're just homogeneous argillaceous muds, and that was the basis of the work. But when you start to apply that to more thinly bedded and heterogeneous pathologies, there's a lot of errors that pop up, particularly in calcareous species. So what we've done is gone in and done detailed geochemical and sedimentologic facies analysis of the entire Greenhorn Formation.
Okay.
And then taken the facies analysis to apply proper baselines to delta log R by looking at not just where organic carbon content may not be maybe zero, but does the geochemical and the facies actually resemble the facies that you're trying to simulate the enriched organic carbon in, and develop facies models for application to delta log R. So we're going to show some of that work in this talk.
Okay, cool. And it's I would assume that core is key for this kind of work.
Core, outcrop, any way you can handle on a rock, but yes, core certainly helps. And the primary basis for this will be the Portland core, which of course is the big famous one near the outcrop in Pueblo.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it. So maybe a couple of fun questions. So what is your favorite, let's just say either outcrop or mineral or both? What do you got? You got a favorite one?
I tell you, there's an outcrop that I've been to it's the south side of I-70, just west of the San Rafael Swell. I don't know if it's a favorite or if it's an enemy of mine, but it's one of those. It's we call it the Blue Road outcrop. I've been there 4 times now. Every time I've been there, it has been a freak rainstorm, and I have yet to complete the entire section. But it is a fascinating outcrop. It starts at the base of the Dakota, goes all the way up to the top of the Farron, and it is an amazing outcrop. And one day I'm going to finish that section. I've got about the first 200 feet of it done so far.
Okay. Yeah, something's acting against you. All right.
It is, and those shale outcrops, when it rains, they're tricky and they're not fun, but it's a truly beautiful outcrop. It really is.
Okay. And so when you're not fighting rainstorms on outcrops, what do you do for fun?
I've got 2 children, 13 and 17 now, so most of my time is spent going to their sports, and I've been coaching baseball since my oldest one was 5. So a lot of time doing that. I'm still coaching my youngest son's baseball travel teams now here in Colorado.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of time spent with them. That's pretty much the majority of what we get to do right now, and enjoying having the older one in the house for the 1.5 years before he's getting ready to go to college. So
yeah. That's a lot. That's great. Cool. Well, like I said before, we're really looking forward to your talk. Again, that's coming up on Tuesday, December 19th. You can find out more about it at rmssepm.org. You can sign up either virtually or come and join us in person. It's always a lot of fun, and it's good to network and kind of meet new people. So come on down, mark it on your calendars. And Dr. Flaum, thanks so much for talking with me today, and for volunteering to be a speaker. And like I said, we're really looking forward to it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to giving the talk and seeing everybody there.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.